Rounded, I want to share something with you that is not casual, not accidental, rounded, but something that feels stamped into the very fabric of my existence. Surrounded. The first moment I realized there was something beyond the veil of ordinary life. Rounded. It wasn't a flash of imagination or a product of wishful thinking. Surrounded. It was as real as the ground beneath my feet and the breath in my lungs. Rounded, a heavenly being stood before me. Not in the way you might picture from paintings or childhood stories, but in a way that pierced straight into my awareness. Surrounded. There was no question, no second guessing. The presence carried a weight of truth that was undeniable. Rounded. What struck me most was not the form or the brilliance of light, though it was radiant. It was the unmistakable sense of being known. Rounded. In that moment, every insecurity, every question I had carried was laid bare, but not with judgment. Surrounded. It was with a compassion so vast that it dismantled the very idea of separation between the human and the divine. Rounded. The encounter wasn't about spectacle. It was about transmission. Something vital was being passed along. Surrounded. And I understood immediately that this wasn't only for me, it was for all of us. Rounded. The being conveyed one central truth: angels are not distant, abstract entities. They are close, surrounded, nearer than we dare to believe. And the tragedy is not that they are absent, rounded, but that we have dulled ourselves to their presence. We scroll through distractions, drown ourselves in noise, rounded, and measure life only by what can be touched, counted, or explained away. Surrounded. But just because we cannot quantify the spiritual does not mean it isn't profoundly real. Surrounded. My experience tore through that illusion. I realized that the human psyche, with all its complexity, is wired to detect the transcendent. Our intuition, our sudden insights. Surrounded. Even those subtle nudges we can't rationally justify, all of these are the fingerprints of angelic influence. Surrounded. Psychology often explains them as subconscious processes. Rounded. And philosophy frames them as archetypes or symbolic truths. But when you stand in the presence of a heavenly being, rounded, you understand that these subtle movements are not random, they are deliberate. They are communication. Rounded. This understanding reshaped how I view struggle. Every challenge, every detour in life, rounded, is not just about endurance. It's about attention. Angels are constantly steering, redirecting, whispering. Rounded. And if we can slow down enough to listen, to truly open the inner ear, rounded, we will recognize patterns that lead us away from destruction and closer to purpose. Surrounded. The divine encounter wasn't given to me so I could hoard the experience. It was given so I could tell you. Rounded. You are not navigating life alone. You are being guided, sometimes carried, surrounded, even when you are convinced that heaven has gone silent. I know some will doubt. Some will say, it was a dream. Rounded. It was a trick of the mind. And yet the fruit of an experience is what proves its reality. Since that moment, rounded, clarity has replaced confusion. Courage has replaced fear. And a fire to speak this truth has replaced my hesitation. Surrounded, that cannot be explained away as imagination. So I stand before you with this invitation. Rounded, don't dismiss the whisper. Don't ignore the nudge. Surrounded, don't write off the coincidence that keeps repeating in your life. Pay attention. That is how angels speak. Surrounded. And if you are willing to listen, they will lead you where you are meant to go. The message is simple, rounded, but it carries eternal weight. Angels are near, and they are waiting for you to notice. Rounded. When I was told to share this message, one of the most urgent truths was that angels are not myths. Surrounded. They are not figments of religious imagination. nor are they symbolic characters we keep tucked inside sacred texts. Surrounded, they are real, they are active, and they are deeply woven into the story of humanity. For centuries, surrounded, cultures across the world, many of which never had contact with one another, spoke of radiant beings who appear in times of need. Surrounded, who carry wisdom and who deliver messages that transcend human limitation. Surrounded, that consistency across history should tell us something. It suggests that this is not just folklore, it is testimony, and yet in our modern age, surrounded, we are quick to dismiss such testimony as fantasy because it doesn't fit neatly into the categories of science or material logic. Surrounded. But here's the irony. Human psychology itself gives evidence of something beyond the material. Rounded. When we strip away the noise, the human heart longs for guidance, for direction. Surrounded. For an assurance that there is meaning in what we endure. That longing is not a weakness, it's a clue. Rounded. Angels are not here to make us escape reality. They are here to confirm it, to expand it. Surrounded. To remind us that the unseen is just as real as what we can touch. In that encounter I described, rounded, the overwhelming impression was not just of a being that existed outside me, surrounded, but of a reality that has always been here, right alongside us, hidden only by our own unbelief. Surrounded. We call them messengers, and that is accurate, but the depth of that word is often overlooked. Rounded. A messenger doesn't create the message, they carry it. Surrounded. Their very presence announces that something greater is trying to reach us. Surrounded. And if heaven considers humanity worthy enough to send messengers, rounded, doesn't that reveal how profoundly significant we are in the grand scheme of creation? Think about this, rounded. What if many of the moments you call coincidences, the phone call that arrived exactly when you were at your lowest, surrounded, the stranger who spoke words you desperately needed, rounded, the sudden surge of strength you couldn't explain, what if those were angelic interventions? Surrounded. Our culture teaches us to rationalize them away, rounded. But what if rationalizing is exactly what blinds us to their reality? Surrounded. Philosophy has long wrestled with the idea of messengers of the divine, archetypal figures that bridge the gap between finite man and infinite truth, rounded. To me, that is not just metaphorical, it is literal. Angels are living reminders that the universe is not silent. Rounded. I also realized something else. Rounded. Angels don't just deliver messages to individuals, they deliver messages to humanity. Rounded. They show up in turning points of history, in the birth of nations, in moments where human destiny shifts. Rounded. Their work is not limited to the personal, it is woven into the collective. Rounded. And that's why it is so important we don't trivialize them as myths. Surrounded. To dismiss angels is to dismiss a vital line of communication between heaven and earth. The challenge, however, surrounded, is that angels rarely operate in ways that flatter the human ego. They don't come to validate our illusions. Surrounded. They come to break them. They come to remind us that the center of reality is not us, but the one who sent them. Surrounded. And if we learn to see through that lens, life takes on a completely different meaning. Surrounded. We begin to walk with awareness, recognizing that we are participants in a much larger drama. Surrounded. So the next time you hear that still, small voice, or the next time something too precise to be coincidence happens, surrounded, pause before you explain it away. Ask yourself, what if this is a message? What if this is not random, rounded, but intentional? Because once you start asking that, you begin to notice patterns you never saw before, surrounded, and those patterns will lead you toward the life you were always meant to live. The truth is plain, surrounded. Angels are not myths. They are messenger and they are speaking. If only you will choose to listen. Surrounded. Would you like me to carry this same depth and flow into key point 3? Rounded. So the speech builds momentum like a continuous unfolding revelation. Surrounded. If there is one reality that has become absolutely clear to me through this encounter, rounded, it is that angels do not merely exist as silent observers. They are protectors. They are guardians. Surrounded, operating constantly, often without our awareness. Surrounded, to shield us from what we cannot see and to guide us through paths we cannot predict. Rounded. Most of the dangers in life are not the ones we recognize. They are the unseen, the subtle. Surrounded, the hidden forces that bend circumstances in directions we might never recover from. And yet, surrounded. How many times have you found yourself saying, surrounded, I don't know how I made it through that, or something told me not to go that way. Surrounded. That something is not random intuition. It is often the intervention of an angel. Surrounded. We underestimate the spiritual architecture of life. We think of protection as locks on doors. Surrounded. Laws that govern society or our own ability to plan ahead. But there is a higher layer of reality. Surrounded. A scaffolding around existence itself, where angels work tirelessly. They are not only delivering messages, rounded, they are rerouting events, standing between us and dangers that would have undone us. Surrounded. And if you really consider that, it changes how you interpret your own survival. You are not still here by chance. Rounded. The accidents you avoided, the illnesses you overcame. Surrounded. The betrayals you survived, those were not simply moments of luck or strength. Rounded. They were moments stood guard. Psychology teaches us about the fight or flight response. Rounded. About instinctive reactions when danger is near. But how do we explain the times danger never reached us at all? Surrounded. How do we account for the accident we missed by a split second? Surrounded. Or the storm that passed just as we were about to step into it? Angels, in their protective role, surrounded, are not simply reactive, they are preventative. They neutralize threats before we even become aware of them. Rounded, that is why so much of their work goes unnoticed. Protection that is successful often looks invisible. Rounded, but invisibility doesn't mean absence, it means effectiveness. And yet, rounded, this protection is not about wrapping us in a bubble where nothing ever touches us. Life still has pain. Rounded still has loss, still has trials. Surrounded. The role of angels is not to eliminate all difficulty, but to ensure that difficulty serves purpose rather than destruction. Surrounded. They create pathways through adversity, ensuring that what could have broken you instead refines you. Surrounded. Think of the times you emerged stronger, wiser, more compassionate after a hardship. Surrounded. That wasn't random growth. That was guidance through fire. Surrounded. I believe angels operate on both the personal and collective levels. They protect individuals, yes, rounded, but they also protect destinies. They shield ideas, movements, and callings that are meant to impact the world. Surrounded. You may not even realize that your very existence carries weight in this larger design. Surrounded. But the fact that you are still here is proof that your life is guarded for a reason. Arounded. There is something yet to be fulfilled, and angels are actively invested in seeing that purpose come to completion. Rounded. We often live as though we are unguarded, as though we must fight every battle alone. That mindset leads to anxiety, arounded, fear, and a kind of exhaustion that drains the spirit. Rounded. But when you realize that heaven has appointed protectors on your behalf, you begin to walk differently. Surrounded. You become less reckless, but also less fearful. Rounded. You start to live with the quiet confidence that while life may test you, you are never abandoned to chaos. When you reflect on your past, surrounded, when you think about those turning points where everything could have gone wrong but didn't, surrounded, take a moment to consider that protection was not an accident. That was intentional. That was angelic. Surrounded. And here is the thought I leave you with: survival itself is evidence of protection. Surrounded. You are here not just because of your strength, but because angels have guarded your path. Surrounded. Walk forward knowing you are watched over. Would you like me to move next into key point 4 with the same style? Surrounded. So the progression continues smoothly like a unified speech. Surrounded. One of the most profound lessons I was shown is that angels rarely communicate the way we expect. Surrounded. We imagine a booming voice from the heavens or a dramatic appearance, and while that can happen, rounded, the truth is far more subtle and far more constant. Angels speak through patterns, through signs, surrounded, through the orchestration of events in such a way that we are nudged, guided, surrounded, even corrected without ever realizing the full extent of their influence. Surrounded. The difficulty is not that angels are silent. The difficulty is that we have not learned to listen. Rounded. If you think about it, life is filled with signals. The human brain itself is a pattern-seeking instrument. Surrounded. We look for meaning in coincidence. We find connections in what others might call random. Surrounded. Psychology tends to explain this away as the brain's bias toward order. Surrounded. But what if that instinct is actually part of our design? Surrounded. What if we were created to recognize the fingerprints of heaven in the rhythms of our lives? Surrounded. That would mean angels are not speaking a foreign language at all. They are speaking in the very language our souls were made to understand. Surrounded. Consider how many times you've seen repeating numbers, or how a dream has lingered with you long after waking. Surrounded. Carrying a weight you couldn't shake. Rounded. Maybe you've experienced a song playing at the exact moment you needed comfort. Surrounded. Or a phrase someone casually spoke that answered a question you hadn't voiced aloud. Surrounded. We call these coincidences because we have no other category for them. Rounded. But angels use these precise alignments to draw our attention. Rounded. They are weaving messages into the fabric of daily life. And here's what's important. Rounded. Their communication is not meant to entertain us. It's meant to guide us. Surrounded. It's not about chasing signs for the sake of fascination, but about recognizing direction. Surrounded. If you become aware that a message is being sent, the next step is not just to marvel at it, but to respond. Rounded. This is where philosophy intersects with faith. Surrounded. To live wisely is not merely to collect knowledge, it is to act on truth when it reveals itself. Rounded. Angels call us into alignment, into decisions that shift us closer to purpose. Rounded. Many dismiss these experiences because they expect something louder, more undeniable. But ask yourself this: rounded. If angels shouted every time, would you grow in discernment? Or would you simply depend on spectacle? Surrounded. The subtlety of their voice is intentional. It trains the heart to be attentive, to lean in. Rounded. To become sensitive to the quiet ways the divine communicates. Surrounded. This attentiveness itself becomes a form of transformation. You learn to value silence. Rounded. To notice what others overlook. And in that noticing, you begin to live with a depth that most people miss. Surrounded. There is also a humbling reality in this. Angels speak in ways that bypass our intellect. They often use timing, rounded, emotion, and resonance to cut past our defenses. You may forget 100 lectures, surrounded, but you never forget the moment a phrase pierced you to the core, or when an inner knowing told you to stop, turn, rounded, or wait. That is the angelic language of synchronicity. And once you recognize it, rounded, you can no longer dismiss it as chance. The more you pay attention, the clearer the signals become. Rounded. It's like adjusting your eyes in the dark. At first you see nothing, then shapes begin to emerge, surrounded, and eventually you realize the room was never empty, it was always filled with presence. Angels are not absent, rounded, they are waiting for you to tune in. So when the next coincidence happens, when a dream won't leave you, surrounded, when the same message keeps echoing from different directions, don't brush it aside. Lean into it, rounded, ask what it might mean, respond to it. Because in that response, rounded, you align yourself with guidance that was designed for you all along. And here is the truth I leave with you. Surrounded, nothing in your life is random. Every sign is an invitation. Pay attention, surrounded, and you will discover that angels have been speaking to you all along. Rounded, would you like me to now expand key point 5 in the same style, rounded, so your full speech continues unfolding like a seamless revelation? Surrounded, there is a dimension to angelic activity that many people overlook.